Hi everyone, this is my first video in English, so please be understanding. Today with me my newest guest. This is the Garmin Epix Generation 2. There were some questions on my Twitter profile about why I just swapped my Fenix 7S Sapphire Solar for the Epix. I bought the Fenix after using the Fenix 7S for 5 months. And I will try to answer you why this change. I will not do a typical review of Garmin Epix 2 because this watch has already been on the market for more than a year. So there are already a lot of reviews of this watch. Actually, before I bought the Fenix 7S, my first choice was the Epix because I've always been a person who used smartwatches with AMOLED screen. In addition, the second generation comes in only one size, which is 47 millimeters, and this is, colloquially speaking, a men's size, and that was blocking me somewhere. Of course, before I bought the Fenix 7S, I drove around the stores, I tried on my hand the Epix, and I didn't mind the size of their weight, but somewhere in there this watch is quite massive, and I had in the back of my mind that maybe it's too big. I thought maybe I should actually choose the Fenix 7S. So I bought the Fenix 7S because I very like this version with nylon strap. For me, the look of this watch is amazing. On the other hand, this display and the battery could be better for me. At first, I thought that over time I would get used to it and it would stop bothering me. On the other hand, over time, it turned out to be the opposite. This display bothered me more and more, and the battery also bothered me. And why? The Fenix screen is a transreflective display. It has only 64 colors, so this display is simply weak. It also has a very low resolution, much lower than, for example, Epix. And while in full sunlight, when I was running, when I was outdoors, the display is very, very good. Indoors, this impression is unfortunately no longer there. In addition, the screen is simply small. It's only 1.2 inches. And while the Fenix 7S itself, in the sense of the bezel, is quite massive, quite thick, the display is simply small. Sometimes I had the impression that the screen should be larger to accommodate more content. The Epix simply has this screen larger. It's 1.3 inches. This screen is just beautiful. And when I look at this watch in terms of its screen, my eyes just light up because it looks nice. This is not only a sports combo, a workout combo, but at the same time a watch that pleases with its display alone. And someone may say, hey, but this watch is simply supposed to be a sports watch. It's not supposed to be a toy. And I agree with that. It's a sports watch. On the other hand, if there was no demand for the AMOLED display in such watches, Garmin simply wouldn't have made this watch. It simply wouldn't sell because people simply wouldn't buy it. And yet, from what I know and from what I can see, the demand for the Epixes is quite high. I will tell you that I was a little afraid of what it would be like in the sun, because here I have a very strong sun in Malta, and Fenix performed great from this angle. And yes, the readability of this display in the sun was better than normal. But in case of Epix, there is nothing to be afraid of. This display is very bright, and even in the strong sunlight, everything is visible here without the slightest problem. When I bought the Fenix, I read on the Garmin website that it would be 10 days of battery life. My mistake that I did not take into account that this is the mode of operation of the watch itself without GPS. It hurt me a little that the Fenix 7S with workouts listed me a maximum 5-6 days on the battery. I work out practically every day, and it really hurt me because when I bought the Fenix, I said to myself, okay, I will swallow this display, but I will have an extra battery, where not only the display was a little weaker, but also the battery, which could be better. I know that is still much better than, for example, Apple Watch, but all the time somewhere in the back of my head was sitting, it's not what I'm going for, which of course was my mistake because I didn't read that it was a watch mode. I used Fenix actually without backlight, even for gestures. I didn't turn on the backlight. If I turn on the backlight above 20%, I would have the battery running down. So I had the backlight of the Fenix set only after dark, because simply the battery was running away from me too much. I turned off the blood saturation measurements right away, because that was also draining the battery. So unfortunately, from this angle, I was not satisfied. And the second thing is the solar. I was very happy when it comes to Fenix, because I'm in Malta. I get the sun very, very much. Of course, Garmin tells us that the solar will work when we are at least 3 hours outside with the sun, which is 50,000 lux. And that's not problem in Malta. Only problem is one. Especially when I was outside for a long time in case of activity. And the moment when I turned on the GPS, the power consumption, the battery consumption of the GPS was very high. Unfortunately, solar was not up to the task here. So in fact, in me, this solar worked in a very few situations. I felt this when, for example, when I was with my husband in Gonzo on a day trip, and there I didn't turn on walking, didn't turn on the GPS. And in fact, for those few hours, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., battery didn't drop. And in that situation, it works. To sum up the topic of the battery, in case of Epix, without any problem, 5-6 days with always on display, because that's the only way I use this watch. I didn't buy it to turn off always on display. I was afraid of the size. The weight of this watch, it is 70 grams, titanium version. Fenix 7S was probably 58 grams. Even if I got some grams wrong, I don't feel that the weight of the Epix is a bother to me. Now to sum up, do I regret replacing the Fenix 7S with the Epix? No, not at all. And of course, you can write here that this watch should be smaller for your hand, this is a men's watch, and it doesn't fit. On the other hand, I will say that this is my choice, and I'm supposed to feel comfortable with this watch. I generally dress sporty on the daily basis, while in a situation where I will going out to some meetings or events, I will just take off this watch and I will put on my old Garmin Venue. So for me, here there is no problem, and I think I can combine it, because in the Garmin app I can have 2 watches active and I just switch between them. So here there is no problem. So now, who would I recommend the Epix and who would I recommend the Fenix to? I think the Fenix is more for people who pay less attention to display, spend a lot of time outdoors, for example, on some ultra runs, or more keen on mountain hiking, but at the same time, also for people whose priority is battery life. At the same time, they want to have the screen on all the time. And of course the Fenix 7, not the Fenix 7S, because Fenix 7, this battery has a much better one. So who is the Fenix for? It's a watch also aimed at people who exercise a lot. In addition to the fact that they exercise a lot, they would also like a watch that simply pleases their eyes. I'm talking about the display here, and I think this is a group, for example, like me, who used to simply use smartwatches and now wouldn't want to give up a nice screen, but would like to have all those features that the Epix just offers. That's all I want to tell you about this change. I will be saying goodbye to you, and I invite you to my next video. See you!